certainly I think he's got to be in the top 5. Would you agree with that? We can, however, talk about Matas Buzelis. I've been hearing a lot of people saying lately, and you know that this always triggers my spidey sense. Like, all right, I got to look at this guy and see whether it's really true or not. That he should have been the number 1 pick in the 2024 draft. If you redid it, that would be him. So I wanted to take a look at it from that lens, and I realized that's a high bar, even in a bad draft, to say a guy should have been number 1. He's certainly the big prospect on the Bulls, and a very exciting player. So I wanted to start by just looking at how he overall has been getting his offense. And there hasn't been that much self-created stuff. It's been a lot of stuff in transition where the Bulls are really good. I would say before we get into the stuff that he does one-on-one, which that's going to ultimately be, unless you're, Larry Markkinen or Klay Thompson or something, that's generally going to be, if you're going to be a star, that's going to be the foundation of it. The two things, though, where he just has vastly exceeded, I would say, my thoughts on his pre-draft film. I didn't think he was going to be a non-shooter, but obviously the numbers for Ignite were ugly. He was in the 20s shooting the 3, and I'm a believer now in his 3-point shot as being totally good. Like, he can even shoot a little bit off the dribble or off a jab step. He'll take it in transition. The form looks good. He's got a good skill. He's got a good handle as well, which always helps you to become a good shooter if you have a good handle, because you know where the ball is. It's easier to pick it up and shoot it. So his 3-point shot, I think, and is something you just have to feel really good about if you're a Bulls fan. Like, I think, especially at power forward, I think he's going to be at least a solid positional shooter, maybe even a slight plus there when it's all said and done. So you were the same, right? Was that one of the reasons that you were so low on him at the time? You just didn't think you were worried he wasn't going to shoot it well.
I was worried that he wasn't going to shoot it well, and that it was pretty much essential considering I didn't believe Puzelis was going to be a 5. I still don't in that.
Yeah.
And not only is it the 3-point on his career, he's Puzelis 6.2 attempts per 36 if we're combining the 2 years, and making 37% of those. Is actually doing better than that this year in terms of percentage. But add in, he's taken about 150 free throws in his NBA career, and he's at 83% on that. So we're building out the overall shooting sample for Puzelis, and I feel markedly better than I did. And if I believed in his jump shot, even being like good for his position, I would have been a lot higher on him, because there were a lot of things that I really liked about Puzelis' game, which I'm sure you'll get into. It was that his jump shot looked, to me, it wasn't just the numbers. It didn't look good in the film we watched. And so it allows some of the other parts of his game to sing.
Then the other thing he's really improved since the draft process is his ability to move his feet defensively. And he can even be passable at the point of attack. If he's guarding a 3 or a 4, getting over a screen, Nikola Vucevic is not someone who's going to switch. And so Buzelis is pretty decent at directing the ball, and pretty decent at trying to stay attached to guys, bothering them from behind. He's pretty fast in a straight line too. So if he gets picked off, his recovery speed getting back into the play is pretty decent. So he's definitely not going to just pressure guys and really cause problems. Like, he's not that sort of an elite athlete mover, doesn't have great length for his size either. But the fact that he can do that at all, I think is good to see. And then even in an isolation, it's rare that he's just getting totally blown by, beaten easily. Guys can score over him. He still isn't that physical. We'll talk some about his shot blocking in a second, but he's not elite, I would say, certainly for a power forward, at affecting shots, either for his man or as a help defender. But he also is not just someone who is going to totally get attacked. I mean, he's not even close to the worst perimeter defender on his own team. And while other teams will attack Josh Giddey way more than him, that can be an advantage to him. It also means that he has to guard up more than he might on some other teams as a power forward. Josh Giddey has to kind of be hidden on, whoever's on the baseline. So that means Buzelis actually has to guard more above the break and in more actions. I think he's been passable in that respect. Take a second here, if you want to call up his rim protection numbers, which I think we should talk about, because that was one of the things, that was probably the biggest skill that actually popped was in the G League. He was averaging over 2 blocks a game, if memory serves. And the thought that he could be this really good shot blocker from the weak side was part of the intrigue for a guy who was kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, was going to need to improve in a lot of areas which of course he has in terms of his individual defense and his shooting already, to find a role and be someone that you wanted to have out there, but not necessarily having the ball. How does it look for him if you take a look at that, Danny, as a rim protector this season?
I think that it's looking better. I would say better than I thought, which is true, but also that wasn't the weakness that I had for Matas Buzelis. I think he's done a solid job. So he's averaging this year 1.3 blocks per 36 minutes. Block rates, I think it's totally fine, but it's more just in the film. You see what I think Buzelis's best defensive attributes, kind of the rim protecting stuff, is that he's there more often. Like he's there a lot, and that really is a deterrent. And when you think about who he's playing with, that's really important.
Yeah, I will say that he is there. I thought that maybe because I really went through it. Obviously, this is my assignment, so I really went through it in more detail and using Sport Radar, I was able to actually watch film of his contests at the rim, and there certainly were plays that were interesting, blocking guys from behind. I mentioned how he can get off of 1 foot. He's got good closing speed, so he's effective there. But he doesn't have the greatest length. So in terms of just walling up on guys, I didn't really see much in terms of verticality using his chest to force misses on a rotation. He'll kind of come over, but then he's not. If he can't just like take a step and really jump, and this is the case in the offensive end too, and really just explode off of 2 feet. He's not actually getting up that high, and then he doesn't have elite timing or length to me. So there will be times when he's in the way, he's reaching out with his arms just aren't long enough, or he's kind of getting knocked backwards a little bit, not able to make the play. And the overall number, he's allowing 69% shooting at the rim at this early juncture,
Oof.
though. Again, I as even in the small samples, it usually the elite guys in that are, your Isaiah Stewart, your Victor Wembanyama, your Rudy Gobert, etc. Even at this early point, so I put some trust in that number. As what the Bulls are basically the worst rim protecting team in the NBA. Part of that's Nikola Vucevic and Jalen Smith as well, but your power forward and Patrick Williams is the other power forward, but Buzelis definitely deserves, I think, some demerits for that as well. Now, for the type of player that he is and as young as he is, I think his help instincts are pretty decent, and he can get up for some big blocks. If he had just a normal rim protecting center next to him, things might be a lot different. But I didn't think that his playmaking at the rim was quite as good as I wanted it to be, quite as good as those block numbers in the G League, or even his block numbers here would suggest, because not that many of those are just him coming over and just making a guy miss and he can get knocked backwards. And so as I think about, do I think this guy has, some kind of all defense potential? I don't believe so. Like, I think he can be totally fine, and a lot of it will come down to getting stronger. Maybe that could revolutionize his game to some degree. We've seen kind of thin guys that be the case for. In the pick and roll on offense, the thing that stands out again is just his ball handling at his size. He's always been a guard, and I think that's both good and bad for him. Bad maybe as a finisher, good for him in the pick and roll. Like his handle is good enough that he can make plays. He's only averaging 1.5 assists per 36, which is not a great number. He's run 42 pick and rolls that have led to either a shot turnover or an assist, or a pass that led to a shot. So 22 shot attempts, 8 turnovers, 12 passes leading to a shot is the breakdown. So that's not a totally useless number as an assist guy out of those types of plays. He really hasn't been used at all as an isolation or a post up player. He has been used a lot of pick and roll, but he's a good enough ball handler that he can kind of get guys on his back a little bit. Most of his good passes are to Vucevic on the roll. Some of those are where he actually gets all the way to the basket and then can drop it off to him as a trailer. The numbers have always been curious to me because even in the G League too, when he had like a crazy usage, his assist numbers were awful. And I don't like, he is capable of making some decent passes. It does raise your eyebrows, that it just doesn't happen that often, and you probably have to go more with that than with the flashes that you see. But the big thing to me is just that he has this handle that allows him to get to places, and I think, great defenders can get into him a little bit more, but again, if he's someone who's doing stuff on the second side, obviously in transition, he could be really effective. So I do think there's something there. I don't think he's gonna be an elite pick and roll operator. I also don't know what's gonna happen if he's playing the 4 and your 4 and your 5 switch. I don't know that his isolation game is going to be that great. Maybe the shooting can kind of make up for that. And then if you look at the finishing numbers inside 5 feet, that's probably, I'd say, the biggest thing that's holding him back, but also the biggest thing that can improve. 55% inside of 5 feet per NBA.com. And that's just for this player type is not a very good number, right? Like he will I think the biggest thing that stood out to me is actually two. One is just not that strong, not getting fouled all that much. And as even against smaller players like guards, a couple times he went up against De'Aaron Fox and just wasn't able to really move him and knock him back. Again, the game is so much about power, using those extra steps that you get in today's game to either elude people or knock guys backwards. And he's more, instead of using his size and his power, partly does it because he doesn't have it. It's a lot of kind of quick one-handed flips, touch shots, and then he doesn't have big hands, and so the ball can kind of get away from him. And there, you just see too many misses, even on shots where it looks like he's got the angle, and you freeze it at the point of release. Oh yeah, this is going in, and it just doesn't. And then the other part is he just doesn't get up. Like he doesn't have that many dunks. He only has 7 dunks on the year, which for a team that's playing this fast, for a guy like him playing with the space floor with Vucevic, like you'd like him to have more dunks than that. And because he doesn't really jump that well unless he really can like take a big step and load up off of 2 feet. If he's coming down the lane and he has a little bit of a body on him, he's struggling to get off the ground a lot more. So I think the strength on both ends, particularly as a finisher, could make him really effective. Again, he's only in his second year. The ball handling is good. The fact that he can shoot it the way he can and handle the way he can at his size and still can jump, even if he's not effectively using that yet. There are a lot of building blocks there. So I guess I'll throw it to you after my long, rambling explanation of just, do you see him as like someone that would be in the mix for you as the number one pick if we redrafted in 2024? Or do you see him as a guy who's going to be an all-star in the future?
I do not. I like Buzelis a lot more than I did. But it part of what you're doing in the draft, it's not just who is the most impactful, who is the best player now, especially considering like the role and everything like that. It's scalability. It's what do we think they can be. And Buzelis is unusually skilled for his size and position. But getting from where he is to where that is on for like the players who make this their calling card, I think there's a big distance there. And the other way that you can get to all-star level is by being a high-level defensive player. And the things about Buzelis that I love how hard he plays. I like his his in some senses I like his applied athleticism, in other areas I don't. And his
Mhm.
jump shot being as good as it is. Like so he applies it running the floor. Like he's more of a straight line guy than a vertical guy. And you talked about his the time it takes for him to get up. But that the pieces that he is right now, even in a weak draft class, like somebody's gonna pop. We don't necessarily know exactly who it's gonna be, but I would rather roll the dice on like Alex Sarr's defensive potential, on Reed Shepard's offensive potential in particular, but some of it, or like I have him below Risache because Risache, who has he's had a kind of a weird season because he's had some injuries, but Risache's game to me fits together more seamlessly and like he could fit in a lot of places. But Buzelis has moved himself up on the list, and you never foreclose on a player, especially one as young as Buzelis is. He's his age 21 season. Moving past that, it's just that getting from where he is to that doesn't always happen.
I wouldn't foreclose that he could end up the best player in this class. I still would probably go Shepard, who's been really good this year, as we talked about last week. I think Sarr, because Washington has been such a shit show. He didn't have a good game in this game you're going to talk about later, the Clash of the Titans game, but I think he's had some his offensive game has really expanded quite a bit this year. Risa Shea has kind of been a guy, but also he hasn't had the Hawks team hasn't been as thirsty for what he can do as the Bulls team has been for what Buzelis can do. And maybe he would be showing more. Like, I think he's still Risa Shea is more of a true wing, probably plays a more valuable position. It wouldn't be insane to me to see Buzelis becoming a three at some point. I think offensively he will be able to play that role. The question just becomes defensively. Maybe he becomes a good enough shooter that you can pair him with an Aaron Gordon type of guy who's can do more of the dirty work defensively, and that would be, I think, make him a lot more intriguing. Obviously, Steph Castle has to be in that conversation as well. But I think Buzelis is certainly in that group. Maybe not at the top of it, but it's not at the point where I'm going to definitively say that Sarr, or Shepard, or Castle is going to be better than Buzelis. I think I would probably take them, but it's definitely, and I think I had Buzelis maybe like 6 or 7 or something. And there's a few other guys who probably should be talked about in this mix, but we don't have the upside. Like Keyshawn George has been really good. Like that, he's probably would be the next group down as well. AJ Mitchell, I think is gonna be a long-term starter, but I'm not sure he has like quite the upside of the guys we're talking about because he's older. So certainly, I think he's got to be in the top 5. Would you agree with that?
I think probably. I think I'd have Keyshawn George over him though. I really we'll talk
Yeah.
about him a little bit later.
I
really
wouldn't
like
be
Keyshawn George.
I wouldn't be totally against that. Again, especially because he maybe is more of a true wing, which is more valuable.